What's up, everyone? Welcome to the RRBG podcast. I am here with Katy Irizarry. Irizarry. Did I say
Yeah,
that
that's
right?
like the real like Latin way to say my last name. So you got it.
Is it a Latin last name?
It is. Yeah, there's actually an interesting and kind of funny story there if
Dude.
you want to hear. Who is at my door? Hold on.
Ooh.
I was just fucking Amazon. Okay. Amazon
Amazon.
aggressively leaving package. Anyway, yeah.
At least they're doing that. In my building, they're just dropping shit off in the lobby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they made it known that they dropped my package off, which is good because it's very expensive cat food. But
Ah.
yeah,
Yeah, my giant bags of dog food are very expensive, and
yeah,
they get mad that they have to bring that up as well.
yes.
So, Katy, how are you? How's work now that the world is opening up again? It seems like it should be very busy.
Wow. And it is, I mean, right now we have a fairly slow summer, and I'm just trying to kind of take that in because things are really, we're going to pop off over the next 4 weeks or so because we have a really stacked fall schedule. We have some of the biggest releases of the year coming up, one right after the other. And then on top of that, we also have several bands on tour. So far, as of recording this, we've announced Weed Eater, Necrofire, Black Tusk, Withered has a couple of dates, Horrendous has a couple of dates. And there's so many other bands on top of that we have some tours coming. Oh, my High Lung at Red Rocks, which is going to be huge. It's sold out. So we have tours in the works, a ton of albums coming out. And even though it's definitely going to be really busy and really crazy, I'm excited because this is a sign that things are finally healing and we're finally on the right path. And I'm actually looking forward to, being busy as normal. So I'm kind of looking forward to being normal.
Getting back to work, and did you enjoy the vacation because a lot of people didn't. They thought it was like very, obviously mentally taxing to not know what your future holds and all that. But some people I know are like, this is the best year of my life.
It was interesting. So I definitely didn't have the same experience as most people. I did have the opportunity to work from home. And I did do that in the beginning. Our office was mostly remote with the exception of a few warehouse people. And it was, the first 2 weeks I was like, oh, this is the best. I could do stuff. I could work on my health. I could work out every day. Like I was loving it. And then as the time went on, I started really feeling stagnant and it really started to get to me. I mean, I live alone with the exception of my cat, of course. And, sitting there staring at the same four walls with no social interaction, it really, for me personally, I know some people that's their dream, but for me, I'm very social. I'm a very outgoing person. And it was really hard for me. So I had come into the office just to pick up some magazines one day. And I saw a couple other people had come back. And I just asked my boss, like, can I come back? And it was really awesome that I respect and appreciate about my boss is they let us make the decision. At no point were they like, you have to come back. Right. They let us do what we're comfortable with. Like we actually still have workers who, one worker that doesn't come in, she's full-time remote. And another that, kind of has like an amended schedule. And, I appreciate that about my company that they make sure we do what we're comfortable with as long as we're getting the work done. And that's been really cool. So I came back after the first 3 months. I came back and I want to say like July of last year. So I've been back in the office all year.
Nice.
And it's nice though, because I do work from home on Fridays from now on, which is a kind of, I don't know that I would have had that. I would think I would have down the road, but maybe not this soon in, working for Season of Mist. So I do appreciate that that's a positive that's come out of it. That's all I need is just one day from home. I like the office environment. I feel more focused. I love being able to spin around in my chair and talk to my boss, like about something that I need his help with or his opinion on. So it's really been very positive for me. And for me, though, the parts that have been difficult are obviously, I've never worked this much. Usually there's little breaks in between because you're going away to a festival for a week or you're, leaving work early 3 days this week because of concerts. And now it's definitely become more of a standard 9-to-5 desk job. And there's all of the stuff that, and I enjoy what I do at my job, but there's no variety anymore. And some of the things that you get to look forward to definitely aren't there. So there's been challenges. It's definitely not been a picnic, but, I can't really complain because my situation, I was allowed to kind of control some of the circumstances more so than I think a lot of other people were.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's got to be the business model moving forward for a lot of companies. They need to reconsider stuff. Like they could just save money, even just not having an extra floor, in their building, and depending on how big the company is, but it's just less commute for everyone, more productivity time. Like, I guess for some people, the commute becomes like a little mini vacation. Like, hey, I have an hour where I get to listen to a podcast on the way to work, I guess. But you could be so much more productive at home. Like right now, I'm getting more done than I ever have because I get all these opportunities. But I think that now with the return of live shows, like I get it. It's weird. It's weird to say that, right? We're super busy. There's a ton of tours, but I'm looking forward to that because it gives me a bit of reprieve, some time to like, hey, the show and hang out and, because hanging out is part of the business that you do. Public relations.
I swear I just had this conversation with someone else at work where it's like, we are, as publicists, some of the most forward-facing people in the company. We're the most social people of this company because we are the ones who are in the public and dealing with the public. So my role definitely is way more interactive and way more social than certain other roles at a record label because we have to be out there making these relationships and making sure our bands are seen and making sure we make the right connections in order for all of that to happen.
Right. I've always felt very intrigued by that as a career choice, just because that's something that I was naturally good at, is just connecting people. Like, hey, you should know my buddy. He makes coffee. He's in a band. Make a band coffee. Have fun. It's always that. I always was like, what kind of career is that? And I guess it's similar. I guess that's as similar as it gets, right? The public relations. PR.
That's part of it for sure. There's that. And also that's also a little bit of production, where you're saying, okay, I want this item for this band. So how do we make it happen? But, at our job, a lot of us are very symbiotic in that we all kind of work, even though we're all separated in our own departments, we still help each other out. Like, there's no dedicated A&R team. There's definitely dedicated A&R people, but we all have a say in different ways. If I hear a band, I'm like, I really like this band. I'm able to bring it. There's been many times where my bosses have pulled me and the other girls in the publicity team in and said, what do you think about this? And our opinions are valued in that sense as well. And that's kind of unique as well for our label because I've worked at other places where that's not really your role as a publicist. So, but yeah, you're right. And honestly, being a publicist, look, you got to be a hard worker. You got to be able to think on your feet. You've got to be a problem solver. But I would say the job is 50% having that social skill and being able to talk to people and deal with different types of personalities on top of that, because
yeah,
you're dealing with musicians. They're something else.
Yeah. You're telling me, wait, they have problems? No. These
totally.
are normal human beings. No, I totally get it. I mean, even just not doing what you're doing, but just being friends with a lot of these bands and then also talking to them here and having to deal with, schedules and whatnot. Like there's, they're not all there stable. That's why they make this amazing music. It's great.
And that's why they need publicists like me to have those conversations and be able to be the socially capable individual in the situation.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, because even my wife pointed it out. She was like, "How come the majority of your PR emails and contacts are female? Like, why is it such a? Not that it's a problem. I'm just wondering, like, why is that the case most of the time?"
This is kind of a running inside joke among publicists, and interesting. Other people are kind of pointing that out, that most of us are female, and then we joke, like John Freeman, who I used to work with, who's one of my best friends, like. He might as well be one of the girls, because he'll be the one on our happy hour, like the only dude there holding it down with a bunch of like cackling bitches, So, but it really comes down to, I just think women, we're more likely to, as a publicist, you got to get on the phone. As women, we're more likely to just want to talk on the phone. I don't know that men necessarily want to do that. And again, I think as women, maybe we are a little bit more emotionally sensitive. And again, dealing with all these different personalities, that's important. I've definitely had a lot of bands have difficulties dealing with certain people at the label, not because that person isn't good at what they do, but just because they only see the logical point and they don't necessarily see the emotional point. And I think as a woman, that's important when you're dealing with all of these artists and personalities and needs, to be able to look at things sensitively and emotively and be able to see the big picture. Because sometimes logic and ration is important, but sometimes you do need to side on with passion in some of these circumstances. And I think that's something that maybe, and again, I don't want to say there's men out there who do it too. I just think it's more natural for women to have these qualities.
That's a better way of saying, what I was thinking. You said it very, intelligently. I'm a dummy. So immediately I'm like, it maybe ties back to, a lot of the bands are males in the bands, and they need like a parental figure, a mother of some sort to keep their life organized. Like, here's your lunch, like go to school, and in my brain, I'm like, it's, you're kind of taking care of the bands. That aside from just trying to make money for yourself, it's not like a selfish thing. Like you're in the business of helping helping bands, making them, grow and become their own thing, and off they go. That's kind of a motherly, perspective, I guess.
That's true. I mean, we joke all the time. We're, managers will say this too. We're glorified babysitters. That's literally what we're doing sometimes. And a lot of that has to do with it. And it is, again, just being able to, artists have very deep and intense feelings, and being able to connect with those feelings, relate to those feelings, understand those feelings, that's important. Especially, like I said, when you're dealing with them every day and you need to be on the same page, you need to also be able to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. And I talked to somebody about this, and I risk sounding like a psychiatrist type or waxing poetically about people's, nonsense. But I think a lot of that comes from the dopamine that hits you when you're on stage. Like when you're a popular artist and you're on stage and you have a crowd yelling at you, it's a crazy shot of dopamine that your brain is like, oh my God, like you're feeling these things. And then when you're not on stage, you have like withdrawals, is what I explain it as. Like you get these withdrawals of, I need to be on stage, and I don't know why I have anxiety now, all this stuff. And it's like, it's because you're not getting that punch of dopamine right now. You're home, and I think that's why a lot of artists are kind of, sensitive or in touch with, like, they're very, they have issues. They need someone to guide them,
It's true. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. It's that rush that they're losing, and that rush is really important for them being able to escape certain circumstances in their lives. And it's an outlet for a lot of people. So yeah, definitely. I mean, I also look at it too. If you look at least most of the bands I work with, they're either very sad or very angry, like they get into this because it's an outlet for their emotions. So they already just have very strong emotions to begin with. And art and music is the way they channel them in the first place.
So what got you into this particular style of music, metal and darkness, and I'm into it too. I'm not like criticizing in any way. It's just where I come from a very strict Catholic background, and I think that's what led me down the path of darkness. I just wanted to rebel against that. So what is it for you that you think led you into that, and not like, say, pop music or R&B or something?
Well, first of all, I still Viva La In Sync. All right. I still like pop music.
Okay. All right.
And not really for the bands I grew up on were Spice Girls, Hanson, and In Sync. But at the same time, my parents were listening to Queen and Alanis Morissette and Nirvana and stuff like that. That was part of stuff I paid attention to, but obviously not as intensely as I would, Mr. Justin Timberlake. But
you just made me feel so old, by the way. You're like, oh, my parents listened to the same bands you grew up listening to, Eddie. It's like, no.
I'm sorry.
I'm so old. All right. Start walk out of here with a cane. Like, no.
I know, right? To call you AARP right now.
I definitely feel like I need a cane after like 3 days of NAMM. That's where we met.
That is where we met. And we're not alone. By the end of that, I mean, that's how I know I'm getting old. I was young, going to concerts every night, rallying, drinking, partying nonstop. I mean, there were nights I'd be at a concert, partying until 5 a.m., come home, get dressed, go to work. Now I'm like, oh my God, I do 2 concerts in 2 nights. My back hurts, my feet hurts. I need to stay in bed for at least 2 days. So I'm with you. My body is, I can't hang like I used to. That's for sure.
I'm now prep for NAMM because of I call my father in Mexico. I'm like, hey, can you send me some of that crazy peyote gel you guys have down there that you can rub and like magically fix his pain? He's like, yeah, I got you. I need that. I know I need it for NAMM. It's going to have to be a thing. So
Festival season as well, man. I'm gonna have to ask you what that is because I'm gonna need it real soon.
oh, it's great. Shit, I don't have it with me here, but yeah, it's like it's got cannabis and peyote, and it's like a green gel, like kind of like Bengay or something, or Vicks or something. But yeah, you rub that on your anything that hurts, joints and stuff, and it's instant. Like your skin tingles, and like it instantly goes away. I'm like, whoa, it's
Yeah, I need
Mexican magic.
I need that. I'm all about that.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, I keep going.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, we went off a tangent. I didn't answer your question with that. Well, I would say it's twofold. I mean, I've definitely already spoken about how I got into the music. My cousin introduced me to Slayer, and I've kind of, at the same time, just was like scared by it, but I liked being scared by it. You know, like I grew up on horror movies and stuff like that. But there's definitely a deeper part there where, you know, at that point, I was 11 or 12 years old, prepubescent, in middle school. And, you know, when you're at that age, you become a little angsty and, you know, you feel very alone and you know, your life isn't, you feel like I look back, I'm like, my God, my life was so easy. Take me back those days. But you don't feel that way. You know, life starts to become hard when you're that age and it's sometimes hard to cope with. And, you know, listening to bands like Linkin Park and Korn and Slipknot and Marilyn Manson, like I really felt like there's someone out there who understands me. And, you know, pop music, they're singing about love and things I don't understand. I don't know what it's like to go through a breakup at that age. I don't know I know what it's like to have a crush, but I don't really know what it's like to have a boyfriend or anything. And, you know, the music can be alienating, but then you listen to these other bands that are singing about what it's like to be alone and are feeling the feelings that you're feeling. There's a real deep connection there. And it's something that I think a lot of metal fans start out with or go through at one point, listening to Nirvana, for instance, and saying, wow, you know, I'm not alone. This person also has been in pain. And, you know, the lyrics are very therapeutic in a lot of ways. And on the other side of it, at the same time, listening to bands like Slayer, and then later on getting into like Cradle of Filth, Dimmu Borgir, and stuff that had a little bit more of a satanic edge. I also grew up very Catholic. And again, around that same age is when I started to really question things. And I would say by the time I was about 14, 15 in high school was when I really felt like, wow, you know, I grew up this way, but does God even like me? Does God even exist? You know, like I really started feeling that, like, you know, what is this? What am I doing? Why am I praying to this person who's not really doing anything for me, who I don't even know is real?
Oh yeah, where is he? I don't know.
Exactly. And
Santa Claus.
yeah, I mean, at that point, I believe more in Santa Claus and aliens than I did in God. Let's be real. Like it just felt really far-fetched, and I started really questioning that. And it was great to find these bands that were, I mean, on one hand, when you find the more satanic stuff, it's really exciting because it feels so naughty, you know, because you're told you can't do this. And that's when you start rebelling and being like, I'm going to do it anyway, you know, and you feel like this rush. And there was also bands that did it more philosophically, like Nevermore, for instance, who I got into a little bit later in high school, where I started really understanding that journey of questioning something that might lie deeper, that isn't necessarily a God or a higher power. And a lot of these things really spoke to me, again, for what I went through, my own crisis of faith.
Yeah, I grew up in a very strict, did you go to private school?
I did up until middle school. Middle school, I finally switched to public school in the 6th grade, but from preschool until the 5th grade, I went to Catholic school, and it was terrible. I mean, the nuns were the worst people ever. They were horrible. Like, again, it's one of those things where it's like, they were nice nuns. Maybe I wouldn't feel the way I would, but they were like bullying me as a little kid. It's like, I don't feel like you're a person of God. I feel like you are the devil. And if you're not the devil, then maybe the devil's not so bad.
Yeah, it's funny because I always wonder, like, the message is so positive, but why is everybody that's involved so mean? We used to get beat with the rulers and stuff by the nuns, and because I grew up in Jersey in private schools, and they were very, very strict, like rulers and you know, just abuse really. And in the second I could get out of there, like as soon as I could, it was kind of like, I need to get out. How is this a positive thing in my life that I'm getting beat up by old ladies for?
My mom went through that, my grandparents, and they used to act like it was a badge of honor.
Oh, yeah,
and like getting beaten by the nuns, like you kids should be beaten by the nuns, and it's like, what? And I mean, for me, it was definitely, they didn't do that by the time I had gotten into school anymore, but there was a lot of verbal and psychological abuse. And one of the most like formative memories I have, and one of those memories that really, looking back, I realized was just very, I don't necessarily want to use the word traumatic, but definitely life-changing, in that it started making me see things through a different lens and started making me question things more. Was I was going through a hard time in school, and I, at the same time, was struggling with certain subjects such as math. This is when math went from being super easy to super fucking hard. And I already struggled with it to begin with. And I would kind of space out, and I started really getting into poetry. And I remember writing kind of a really personal, dark, sad, cry for help type poem. And instead of like reading that and thinking, I need to help this student, the nun just took it and read it to the whole class and humiliated me and made fun of me for it.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good idea for mental health.
Right. And then by the time it's like, what are you doing? Like, I was a child. I was like 9 years old or 10 years old. And it's like, that's how you, and like looking back, I mean, I didn't even realize how fucked up it was at the time. I just knew it hurt me. And I remember thinking, how, like I remember that, wanting that to be a cry for help and having that moment of maybe someone, because I didn't really know how to express myself. And it's like, wow, okay, man, that fucked me up. And you don't realize it till you get older, how, incremental that was to kind of your development. And meanwhile, let's fast forward, I'm in high school. I went to a public high school. And one of my teachers got I turned in the wrong journals. And, instead of my regular school, oh, everything's great journals, they got one that was a little bit darker. And the first thing they did was send me to a guidance counselor, who became my rock through the first 4 years of high school and was really there for me. And it was so different. And that was also one of those things that made me realize, wow, here's this person who actually cares and wants to help me. And here's this nun who's supposed to help the children of God, just completely fucking making things worse. Like, it's crazy. And yeah, so things like that definitely caused me to really reevaluate my faith. And like I said, especially you, I'm sure know, and anyone who grew up in a very non-secular household where it was very religious and very strict, you don't have much diversity, and you don't really know that there's other ways of thinking. I had an uncle that used to say, oh, that Bible's a book of fairy tales. And I used to think he was being mean. And then looking back, I'm like, he was the only adult being honest with me.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I just, how was that conversation? How did it go down when you told your parents, like, I need out of this? Or was it that did you get kicked out? Like, how did that transition to public school happen?
Well, actually, my mom took us out of Catholic school. This was unrelated. I mean, at the time, I was questioning things, but not really as intensely as I had a couple years later. But my mom actually took us out because of the abuse I was going through from the nuns, the teachers. And my mom even had joined the PTA, was giving the school more money, doing things that she thought would help me. And instead, she felt like, why am I bothering if they're going to treat my daughter this way? So my mom actually stepped up and took us out, not for religious reasons, but just because she realized that it was really damaging the private Catholic school system, and she wanted something better for my brother and me. But, and my father is also very, I would say maybe more agnostic. Like, the man has a million superstitions, like he's afraid of odd numbers and things like that.
Okay.
But he was never a churchgoer either. And I remember, like, we were kids, he would be watching the Sunday football game. We'd be going to church. My mom would be screaming, you're going to hell, and it's like, and my father never pushed that on us out of respect for my mother and her upbringing of us as, in her religion. But he never really was a religious person either. I mean, he grew up Italian Catholic, but it wasn't pushed on him as much as it was my mother. And he also just eventually in life kind of was like, I'm just going to do my own thing, whatever. And, and like I said, that though was never really a conversation or something we talked about because, he respected her upbringing and wanting to raise us a specific religion.
Right.
And so that was never really an issue. But yeah, I just remember one morning, I made my confirmation and I made the choice to still, my mom gave me the option, you're now old enough to decide if you want to go to church or not. And I did decide to keep going to church because I did feel like maybe I should still try. Maybe now's my time to prove myself to God and things will get better. And I thought also too, I didn't want to disappoint my grandparents, who I definitely have always had a closer relationship with, and they were very religious. So I still kept going, but then things kind of deteriorated more for me as far as my faith went. And I just remember one morning just having a really bad morning, and it was a Sunday morning and just being so depressed and not wanting to get out of bed. And my mom woke me up for church and I was just like, no, I'm not going. Nice. And she was a little annoyed and trying to push me, but realized she can't, because as a fully confirmed Catholic, I now can make that decision myself.
Right.
And, she was angry about it. She didn't speak to me for a few days, but eventually, especially as it continued to be a pattern and I never went back to church, she got a little more frustrated. We had a lot of big blowouts around holidays, Christmas and Easter, where she felt my brother and I should attend and we didn't want to, because my brother followed right in my footsteps. And as soon as he made his confirmation, same thing, he was done. So, she wasn't very happy about that, but, it made things easier with the support of my father. And even my grandparents, they were disappointed, but they would never really talk about it, and I appreciated that. And I think they hoped, especially my grandmother, that eventually I would have a change of heart. But I do feel they accepted it. And then, things got really crazy when at that point I'm 15 and I'm a sophomore and I have an allowance now. And I'm buying satanic jewelry on St. Mark's Place and wearing inverted crosses. And remember that when the inverted cross necklace was discovered, the meltdown everyone had, my mom, my grandparents, it was craziness. And again, eventually, same thing, when I got tattoos, eventually they just got over it, So it's just there was that hard part right at the beginning. And then eventually, whether or not they accepted it, I feel like maybe they did. But they lived with it. And they got over it, and it was just it's not really an issue anymore. I think a lot about getting my neck tattooed, and I'm that's gonna be the next thing. That's gonna be
a Thanksgiving dinner conversation for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had it was similar, same thing when I got my first tattoo. I had to hide it for a while from my grandfather because he was very against that. And then when he finally did see it, he disowned me for a year. You're not part of the family. You're a delinquent. I'm oh my God.
Oh, I know. It's we're going to kill someone. They act like it's the end of the world.
In my family, tattoos represent crime. That was the thing. So if you had tattoos, you've been to jail and you're a criminal, you're a delinquent, you're, trash. And, I went ahead and got my whole arm tattooed right away. It was it didn't start, let me do a small, no, boom, the whole arm. And they were no, it was so, it's crazy to think, that upbringing. It blows my mind when you think, I got kicked out of Catholic school. My parents didn't. Props to your mom for caring. You know what I'm saying? I want to make sure she's not getting abused. I got kicked out because they asked something. I asked something about dinosaurs, and they got really upset, the nuns, and they started yelling at me for asking, and I started laughing. I couldn't stop laughing. Just uncontrollable laughter. And then they came over and they started beating me to stop laughing, and I just fell over and just laughed more. It wasn't even hurting. So I was just I can't believe they're hitting me. So I just kept laughing. And they sent me home with a priest because apparently I was possessed by the devil and I needed an exorcism. I'm dude, I'm not possessed. This is just so ridiculous. I can't stop laughing at you.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's so crazy. And then they act shocked why all these schools closed down, and why they act shocked no one wants to donate to the fucking church anymore.
You hear what's going on in Canada?
I knew about was this with the native children at that school? It was awful.
There's another one. They found another school filled with dead bodies. I'm what?
Oh my God.
This is insane. So
it's so insane. And there's been other organizations too. Let's be real, the entire Catholic Church had a severe pedophile child molestation cover up. Not only was it a crisis, but they actively covered it up. Yeah. And again, it's I even remember my grandma towards the end of her life having conversations and even admitting priests are bad. There are bad priests out there. Not every priest, but there are bad priests out there. And her admitting that there had been faults in the Catholic Church. And I admired that because I know it was hard for her to admit that. But there's people who will ignore it and just blindly, make it like, that didn't happen. Or, it's no big deal. It's like, no big deal. My God, it's not like they were embezzling. That's no big deal. I mean, it sucks, but that's something you could forgive. Yeah. And what they did to the children, innocent children. And again, maybe, you and I were lucky enough that we didn't face that kind of abuse, but there was still other abuses you and I each individually faced. And it's just, so there's been a cycle there, and it's crazy. And again, it's like, I don't think necessarily, this is a difficult conversation because I think a lot of times I'm very anti-religion in general. I'm very anti-organized religion. And that's kind of across the board. Yeah. And that can really come across that I don't like religious people. And it's not really the case, because I understand there are people out there who have had a positive experience in their faith. And there are also people out there who their faith is something very important to them, and that's helped them overcome a lot of things. And I respect that. And there are also people who use their faith for good and who really do look at the positives and try to be the positive example. But overall, I still think organized religion can be very damaging. And unfortunately, it damages a lot of the followers of those religions.
Absolutely. I've always told everyone, do your thing. It all works if you believe in it. It all works. Santeria works if you are into it. And I've seen it work. So I'm just, hey, I'm going to put a curse on that dude so that his foot gets swollen. And then you play around with a chicken and do some magic, and his foot gets swollen. Damn. I mean, I can't, I'm not going to start practicing Santeria or whatever, but I know it works for you. That's crazy. And same with Christianity. It doesn't work for me. I got beat right out of that building, but I know that it works for other people. Praying to God brings them peace or whatever. And they pray to God for their family members to get out of illness, and they do. And, it's God, not medicine and science. It's God that did it. But, what am I going to do? I'm not going to try and convince you otherwise, There's no point in arguing about religions with people. It's just, I can show you my point of view. And if you're open enough to listen to it, then maybe you can think of things differently, just a little bit. Just back away a little bit from the picture, because people get sucked into it. So I don't know how we got into religion. Let's go back to your career.
Can I tell you though, this is probably one of the most exciting conversations I've had. I do a lot of podcasts, and I do talk a lot about my career and my background. And no one's ever actually really gotten into that with me. And it's something I actually really like to talk about. Something I think is important to address, especially because I know there's a lot of people like you and I who have gone through that. And so I actually really am glad you brought this up, because this is probably one of the coolest, the most meaningful conversations I've really had.
I appreciate that you appreciate it. I'm glad. So do you find yourself attracted to religious artwork, even though you don't believe in it anymore? Like, I still like going to, when I go to New York, I got to go to the cathedral, St. Patrick's and all that stuff. Like, do you still find yourself attracted to that artwork, or are you kind of just like, whatever?
Absolutely. Yeah. Religious imagery, I find very compelling. Same thing with the architecture when it comes to cathedrals and the stained glass windows and stuff like that. Even the music, I was in the church choir and I was an altar server, which is also crazy because now I'm a heathen, but even like the music, that's why sometimes I think I favor bands like, let's say, Batushka, where they really take that Baroquean traditional religious music and make it really dark and evil. Yeah. I love that. And it's something that's always going to be a part of me in some way or another. I think I look at things differently, and I feel you could probably imagine it the same, with a way more artistic eye than obviously a spiritual one. And I can appreciate the art as well, the architecture and even the music. Even, I love too, I think that's why I favor bands too, even like Ghost, because they take all that religious imagery and invert it and make it so evil. Yeah, and I love that.
Yeah, Ghost really struck a chord with me. The second I saw them, I was like, whoop, this is all me right here. and also, I saw Batushka at, I think it was Psycho. And I remember just walking in, I was meeting up with Josh Barnett, the War Master.
I love him. Mm-hmm.
And he's standing over by the soundboard. So I walk over to him and he's just staring. And I was in that mode, you know, when you're working at a festival, I wasn't really paying attention. So I'm just walking. I'm like, where's Josh? There he is. I go over and I see him just staring, and I look over to the stage and they're playing. And it's just, you know, that performance of theirs with the smoke and the church thing and the podium. And I was just like, oh, fuck. Like, it just completely took over. Like, it's a vibe. That's what it is. That Batushka live. I don't know. It's not for everyone, but if you're into religion and then also dark imagery, check them out. So now that you are out of that, and it seems to me you're doing well. You're writing articles for stuff. I bought the magazine. You know, you're doing things. And what's your plan? Do you want to keep just doing PR forever, or are you planning on maybe branching out and becoming something else? I mean, because it seems like you're, you know, I see the coals in the fire and all that, you know, the irons in the fire, as they say.
Wow. You know, I mean, it's actually brought this up at a very interesting time in my life because I am obviously still doing PR at Season of Mist, but I'm also taking on, I don't want to give too many details away, but I am taking on a new project there that definitely requires my radio and production experience, as well as my program direction experience and content development experience, and really taking that to the next level with another, what's the word I'm looking for? Another content-based channel we're going to launch. And I mean, I feel like you can figure out where I'm going from that. I know you personally can, because you and I spoke about this a little bit before we actually got into it on the interview. You know, so it's something that I am working on, and as of now, I believe I'm going to be doing both. And I do think there might eventually be a crossroads where I need to kind of favor one over the other. Right now, that's PR for me, but as the project grows, assuming it grows, which is the goal, I am going to have more responsibility in that. And I mean, I actually would love to do both. I would love to do PR. And I mean, that's kind of always been the goal, to be able to take everything I know and roll it into one, because I get bored doing one thing as much as I love it. Repetition is not really my thing. I need variety in life, which is why I thrive side hustling and doing other things, whether it be writing articles or doing a podcast or doing production or whatever it might be. And I mean, right now I'm taking a step back from a lot of things just to kind of focus on myself and just focus on my social life for a change, you know, especially now after not having one the past year and a half because of, you know, why. The same reason no one has had a social life really the past year and a half. But this actually kind of gives me an opportunity to now focus on all these things in kind of one area. And I mean, I want to stay with Season of Mist, but I do see my role there maybe changing over the next 2 years. And I don't know what that'll look like specifically. Maybe I'm even saying too much here. I mean, again, it's something that is going to happen, something that I'm able to now use all of my passions and combine them into one, and able now to give myself daily variety in my program and schedule.
That's good. I mean, look, and I know you were like concerned right now, like I'm saying too much. You got to sometimes say it to make it reality. You know, you got to say it out loud, and it's weird how that works out. Usually when you want something, you work on it, obviously, but you also got to put it out there. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And then it helps motivate you to achieve that goal. Because if you're saying it out loud, it means you really want it, and you should do what you want to do. And, you know, I think it'll happen. I mean, you've been killing it. Like I said, you're doing also the Pits, Last Words. Are you still?
That got canceled. Our last episode was like, I mean, as of now, we're taping this. Our last episode, I think, was like a week or two ago. Okay. But again, it sucks in some ways, but again, I'm relieved because now this frees up more personal time, which is something I haven't had in the past 10 or 12 years. So I kind of want to be able to just now focus on one thing, take a little break, and be able to kind of know what it's like to just be a regular person with one job instead of a superhuman freak with 15 jobs.
Right.
So yeah.
Mental health is important. So yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
Totally.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad that you've got your plan. It sounds like you've got your plan, and you know, you're killing it. Like I said, I get your emails all the time where we work together with trying to promote albums and stuff, and you know, it's a pleasure to be involved into this scene, like with the way you're doing it. And are you planning on going to NAMM?
If it happens, yeah, absolutely, because
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have bands out there. I mean, our Spire's out there pretty much every year. David Vincent tends to go out there as long as he's not on tour. Paul Masvidal from Cynic could possibly make an appearance. He usually decides kind of last minute, which I love about him. Like, well, here, won't he? So we have a couple of artists that are Beyond the Creation guys usually go out there. So we have a bunch of artists that will likely be in attendance, and as long as they're there, I'm going to be there as well, being their hype girl, producing content for our new venture, you know, stuff like that. And of course, getting to hang out with people, my West Coast people like you, who I never get to see in real life, and actually being able to like have real human in-person interactions.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, Katy, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad it's finally happened.
Me too. It's really a privilege because I know how busy you are as well, doing a million things. So making time for me means a lot, because I know there's probably a long list of way cooler bands that you can talk to right now.
Nobody wants to talk to me. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, please.
I'm kidding.
Can I just say, I just want to say, I'm going to say this right here on air for other people to say.
Okay.
Eddie, you know, you did some interviews for me at NAMM, at the last NAMM that there was. And I just want to say that one of our artists that you interviewed came up to me and said you were the coolest fucking guy he's spoken to, and he will talk to you anytime, any day. And when he said that, I was like, this guy will get any interview he ever wants from me, because normally I get the opposite. I get the, oh, I don't want to talk to him. Oh, that, you know, or, oh, that sucked. Or, oh. But you were one of the ones that got an absolutely glowing review from one of my biggest artists. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I mean, that's awesome. I try and do that. I know how annoying interviews can be, you know, and it's the same questions over and over. So I'm like, I think Dean and I talked about shoes and pants for like the first 10 minutes.
You talked for a while too. I think you guys had like a solid 45 minutes, maybe even an hour. Yeah. And again, usually I'm in there like, okay, 15 minutes, bye. And he wanted to talk.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad he enjoyed it. And I'm glad you came on and we had, like you said, a very meaningful conversation. That's what I try and do. But if anybody wants to keep, follow you, how do we do that? What's the best avenue? Which social media is your favorite? Because mine is Instagram.
Mine would be Instagram and Twitter. Instagram's for all the photos, and Twitter is for all of my random thoughts. So Instagram and Twitter at Merciful Kate.
Merciful Kate. All right. And I mean, guys, so much work coming out from her. The Seasons of Mist putting out ridiculous amounts of music. It's amazing, and it's all great. So keep an eye out for those records. And thanks again.
Thank you. Stay tuned for the fall, guys, because we've got big things happening.
Ooh, I'm excited.
All
Cheers,
right.
everyone.
Thanks, Eddie.
Later.